night was quiet, but in the shadows of America's toughest neighborhoods, silence never meant safety. Somewhere in the heart of Los Angeles, a young man was about to take his first step into a world from which there was no escape. His name was Miguel Alvarez, and at just 17, he was standing at the edge of a decision that would shape and eventually destroy his life. Miguel was like thousands of teenagers across America, restless, angry, searching for belonging. His father had disappeared years ago, swallowed by prison walls, and his mother worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. But in Miguel's neighborhood, it wasn't family that raised you, it was the streets. And the streets were controlled by a gang that demanded loyalty sealed in blood. The gang called themselves La Fuerza, the Force, a ruthless syndicate connected to cartels across the border. To outsiders, they looked like a group of tattooed young men hanging on corners. But behind closed doors, they were soldiers in a war most Americans never saw. Guns, drugs, extortion, and fear were their currency. To join them was to be promised protection, respect, and power. But what they didn't tell you was the price. Miguel's initiation began in the dead of night. The older members circled him in an abandoned warehouse lit only by flickering bulbs. Their tattoos glistened with sweat, their eyes cold. The leader, a man known only as Reyes, stepped forward. He carried a knife in one hand and a red bandana in the other. "This is the oath," Reyes said, his voice echoing off the walls. "Once you take it, there is no turning back. You are one of us until death." Miguel's hands trembled, but he nodded. He thought this was a family he had always needed. What he didn't understand was that this family would become his cage. The ritual was brutal. They beat him until he could barely stand. Each punch and kick meant to test his loyalty. When blood spilled from his mouth, they cheered. When he gasped for air, they shouted his new name, Soldado, soldier. Then Reyes pressed the blade to Miguel's palm, carving a shallow cut. The red bandana wrapped around his hand, sealing his blood to theirs. It was his first blood oath, but oaths in this world were not made with words. They were proven with action. Miguel's first assignment came just hours later. The gang piled into a car and handed him a gun. "Tonight," Reyes growled, "you show us you belong." They drove to a rival neighborhood, where another gang claimed the streets. Miguel's stomach twisted as they handed him a target. A boy not much older than himself, standing on a corner beneath a flickering streetlight. The car slowed. All eyes turned to him. This was the moment. With trembling hands, Miguel stepped out of the car. The gun felt heavier than anything he had ever held. His mind screamed to run, but behind him, he could feel the cold stare of Reyes. He raised the weapon. One shot cracked through the night. The boy collapsed. Silence followed, then the eruption of cheers from the car. Miguel had proven himself. But that first trigger carved more than a victim into the pavement. It carved guilt into Miguel's soul, a weight he would carry forever. In the weeks that followed, Miguel's life spiraled deeper into the gang. He wore their colors, carried their guns, and collected debts for their drug trade. Every day, he walked a tightrope between power and death. On the surface, he looked untouchable, a soldier respected in his neighborhood. But inside, he was drowning in fear. He quickly learned that the gang's promise of brotherhood came with chains. Once inside, there was no leaving. Betrayal was punished with blood. Members who dared walk away were found in alleys, their bodies riddled with bullets. Miguel watched funerals pile up, one coffin after another, and the whispers always said the same thing. He tried to leave. One night, Miguel sat in the back of a dingy bar, his body tense as Reyes gave orders. The cartel demanded more shipments moved across state lines. It was dangerous, high-stakes work. Miguel wanted to refuse, but one glance around the room told him he had no choice. The men surrounding him weren't brothers. They were wolves, and weakness was blood in the water. As Miguel nodded his agreement, he thought back to that boy under the streetlight, the first life he had taken. He saw the boy's eyes every time he closed his own. That was the true cost of his oath. Not just blood spilled on the streets, but the slow death of his conscience. And yet, the cycle pulled him deeper. The gang rewarded him with money, with false respect, with the illusion of power. Neighbors who once ignored him now feared him. Girls who once laughed at him now whispered his name. But every smile, every dollar, came with the knowledge that could all end in a single bullet. One evening, his mother caught him slipping cash into her purse. She looked at him with tired eyes, asking no questions, but the silence between them cut deeper than any blade. She knew. She always knew. And for the first time, Miguel felt shame more powerful than fear. But Reyes had plans for him. Bigger jobs, bloodier oaths, and Miguel was about to discover that in the world of gangs, betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes, it comes from the very brothers who swore to protect you. Miguel's name carried weight now. On the streets of East Los Angeles, whispers followed him. People nodded when he passed. Children avoided his gaze. He was no longer just Miguel Alvarez. He was Soldado, Reyes' soldier. But in the underworld, respect is never given freely. It is borrowed, and the debt must always be repaid in blood. The months that followed were a blur of missions. Drug runs across the border, armed robberies in the city, extortion of local businesses. Each job left another scar on Miguel's conscience, yet each job also brought him deeper into Reyes' trust. With every dollar pocketed and every rival silenced, Miguel's loyalty was tested, and each time he passed. But loyalty in gangs is a weapon, sharp on both edges. The more he gave, the more Reyes demanded. Miguel soon realized there was no finish line, no day when Reyes would say, "You've done enough." The price of belonging was eternal. Reyes ruled with fear, not love. He rarely smiled, but when he did, it was a smile that carried no warmth, only calculation. At meetings, he sat at the head of the table, a pistol resting near his hand like a silent threat. Miguel admired him at first, believing Reyes to be untouchable. But as the weeks turned to months, admiration shifted to something else. Suspicion. One evening, Miguel and his crew were sent to collect from a local auto shop. The owner had fallen behind on payments. Miguel expected resistance, but what he found shook him. The man knelt on the floor, trembling, his daughter hiding behind the counter. Tears streamed down his face as he begged for more time. Reyes' orders were clear: no mercy. Miguel's partner, a hot-headed recruit named Flaco, raised his gun. Miguel stopped him. Something inside cracked. He saw his own mother in that man's desperation, his younger self in the girl's terrified eyes. Against orders, Miguel told the man he had one more week. When word reached Reyes, the punishment was swift. Miguel was dragged into the warehouse, surrounded by his so-called brothers. Reyes stood before him. Disappointment etched into his cold face. "You think you can choose?" Reyes asked, his voice like steel. "You think mercy makes you strong? Mercy makes you weak. Weak men die." Then Reyes ordered Flaco to deliver 10 blows to Miguel's ribs. Each strike echoed like thunder. By the end, Miguel could barely breathe. But worse than the pain was the realization. Reyes had humiliated him in front of everyone. The message was clear. Miguel was not untouchable. He was expendable. After that night, Miguel's loyalty began to fracture. He still wore the colors, still carried a gun, but in the quiet of his room, he started asking questions he never dared before. Was this really brotherhood? Or was he just another pawn in Reyes' game? Meanwhile, the gang's operations grew riskier. The cartel demanded bigger shipments. Police pressure was mounting. Informants were rumored to be everywhere. Paranoia seeped into every corner of La Fuerza. One night, Miguel caught Flaco whispering on the phone, his back turned, his voice urgent. When Flaco noticed him, he quickly hung up, his eyes darting like a guilty man's. Miguel said nothing, but the seed of doubt took root. Betrayal was in the air, and Miguel wasn't sure who he could trust. The turning point came during a cartel shipment run. Miguel and 3 others were ordered to escort a truck loaded with cocaine through a desert highway. Halfway through the night, police lights flashed in the rearview mirror. A chase erupted, bullets flying through the darkness. Miguel barely survived, escaping into the desert with sand burning under his feet. But when the chaos ended, the truck was gone. Millions of dollars worth of product vanished. Reyes was furious. He demanded answers, and when none came, he pointed fingers. The whispers grew louder. Someone had tipped off the police. Miguel noticed how Reyes' eyes lingered on him longer than the rest. Suspicion is poison in a gang, and once it infects, there's no cure. Miguel realized he was no longer just a soldier. He was a potential traitor in Reyes' mind. Days later, Miguel found a message slipped under his door. No signature, just 5 words scrawled in ink. "He's setting you up, bro." Miguel's blood ran cold. Who had written it? Flaco? One of the older members? Or was it a trap from Reyes himself? The paranoia ate at him. He started noticing cars tailing him at night, strange faces lurking on corners, conversations that stopped when he entered the room. Every smile from his brothers now looked like a wolf baring its teeth. But beneath the fear, another thought gnawed at him. Maybe the message was true. Maybe Reyes was preparing to sacrifice him to save himself. The betrayal Miguel had feared wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. In the world of gangs, trust was an illusion, and betrayal was the only certainty. And Miguel was about to discover just how deadly betrayal could be. The air in Miguel's neighborhood grew heavier with every passing day. The walls felt closer, the shadows darker. Everywhere he turned, whispers clung to him like smoke. The missing cartel shipment had created a storm, and Reyes was searching for someone to blame. Miguel could feel the leader's suspicion like a knife pressed against his neck. One evening, Reyes summoned a crew to the warehouse. The atmosphere was tense, charged with something unseen but deadly. A long table sat in the middle, littered with bottles of beer and scattered bullets. Reyes sat at the head, his pistol gleaming under the dim light. Around him, the soldiers waited in silence, their eyes flickering between one another, their loyalty worn thin by paranoia. Reyes spoke slowly, his words slicing through the room. "There's a traitor among us. Someone fed the cops. Someone cost us millions." His gaze swept the table like a blade. It paused just long enough on Miguel. The silence was suffocating. No one moved. No one dared breathe too loudly. Miguel clenched his fists on the table, his mind racing. He knew what Reyes was doing, planting seeds of fear, testing loyalty, watching for the first crack. Then Reyes slammed his hand on the table and pointed. "Flaco," he barked, "stand up." The young recruit obeyed, trembling slightly. Reyes circled him like a predator. "You've been sloppy. You've been careless. Maybe you've been talking." Flaco stammered, denying it, his voice shaking. But Reyes' mind was already made up. In a flash, he pulled his gun and fired. The shot echoed through the warehouse, Flaco collapsing in a pool of blood. The crew froze. Miguel's stomach churned. He knew Flaco wasn't the traitor. He remembered that late-night phone call, the nervous eyes. But Flaco was reckless, not disloyal. Reyes had chosen him because someone had to die. Someone had to carry the blame. And by killing Flaco, Reyes sent a clear message. Loyalty didn't matter. Survival did. After the meeting, Miguel couldn't sleep. He lay awake in the darkness, Flaco's death replaying in his mind. The sound of the gunshot echoed in his ears, but beneath it, another sound haunted him. Reyes' laughter, low and satisfied. Days later, Miguel discovered something that shook him to his core. An old friend from childhood, now working as a low-level courier for the cartel, pulled him aside. He whispered the truth. It wasn't Flaco who tipped off the cops. It was Reyes himself. Reyes had staged the raid, sacrificing the shipment, to strengthen his grip on the crew. The chaos gave him control. Fear kept everyone in line. Miguel's blood ran cold. The leader he had once admired was nothing but a puppeteer, pulling strings with blood-soaked hands. And now Miguel knew too much. The weight of betrayal crushed him. He wanted to confront Reyes, to scream the truth, but he knew better. In this world, knowledge was a death sentence. Instead, he kept his head down, his silence heavy, his smile forced. But inside, a storm was brewing. Then came the order that broke him. Reyes demanded Miguel carry out a hit on a rival lieutenant. Not an enemy on the streets, but a man who lived in the same neighborhood, whose kids played at the same park. Miguel couldn't do it. Not after everything. For the first time, he lied. He told Reyes the target had vanished, gone underground, impossible to reach. Reyes' eyes narrowed. Suspicion etched into his face. He said nothing, but Miguel could feel it. His days were numbered. The following week, Miguel noticed a black SUV parked across from his mother's house. It lingered too long, left too late. He knew the signs. Reyes was watching him, circling him like a vulture. Miguel made a decision that night. He would not end up like Flaco, a body discarded in an alley, his name forgotten. If betrayal was inevitable, then he would strike first. He reached out to the only person he thought he could trust. His cousin Javier, a mechanic with no ties to La Fuerza. Under the cover of darkness, Miguel slipped into the garage and confessed everything. Javier's face twisted with fear as Miguel explained Reyes' treachery. The cartel's grip, the blood oaths that had chained him. "You need to run," Javier whispered, his voice urgent. "Get out. Leave the city. Leave everything." But Miguel shook his head. "You don't leave La Fuerza," he said. "Not alive." The plan was reckless, desperate. Miguel would gather evidence, enough to prove Reyes' betrayal to the cartel itself. If Reyes could be exposed, maybe, just maybe, Miguel could survive. But in the world of gangs, secrets don't stay buried for long. One night, as Miguel returned to his mother's house, he felt the air shift. The street was too quiet. The SUV was gone. The shadows seemed to breathe. Then, from the darkness, figures emerged, Reyes' men, guns in hand. Miguel's pulse thundered. He reached for his weapon, but the numbers were against him. In seconds, he was disarmed, dragged into a waiting van. His fate was sealed. The van doors slammed shut, plunging him into darkness. Across from him sat Reyes, his cold eyes glinting like steel. A cruel smile spread across his face. "You think I don't know?" Reyes whispered. "You think you can betray me? You were mine the moment you spilled blood for me, and now you'll pay the price." Miguel's world spun. His chest tightened. The blood oath, the brotherhood, the promises, it had all been a lie. He was never a brother. He was never safe. He was just another sacrifice waiting to be made. And in that van, under Reyes' watchful eyes, Miguel understood the final truth. In America's most dangerous gangs, betrayal isn't the exception. It's the rule. The van rattled down the deserted road, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Miguel's wrists were bound, the rough rope digging into his skin. The soldiers of La Fuerza sat in silence, their faces blank, their eyes cold. Only Reyes spoke, his voice low and venomous. "You thought you could outsmart me," he said, almost amused. "You thought you could expose me to the cartel? No one exposes me, Miguel. No one." Miguel's heart pounded, but he forced himself to stay calm. He knew pleading would do nothing. In Reyes' world, mercy was a weakness, and weakness was punishable by death. The van stopped in the middle of nowhere, a stretch of desert where the skies swallowed the earth in silence. The men dragged Miguel out, throwing him to his knees in the dirt. The cold barrel of a gun pressed against the back of his head. Reyes stood over him, his shadow stretching long under the moonlight. "Do you remember your first night with us?" Reyes asked. "Do you remember the oath you took? You swore you were ours until death. And tonight, that oath is fulfilled." Miguel's breath came in ragged gasps. He thought of his mother, of her tired eyes and quiet strength. He thought of the boy he had killed on that street corner, the face that still haunted his dreams. He thought of Flaco, betrayed and discarded. And in that moment, something inside him broke, not with fear but with defiance. He spat blood into the dirt. "You betrayed us all," he hissed. "You're no leader. You're a coward hiding behind fear." The soldiers shifted uneasily. They weren't used to seeing defiance. Reyes' eyes narrowed, rage flashing like lightning. He raised his gun, ready to end it, but Miguel had one last card to play. Hidden in the sole of his shoe was a razor blade, small but sharp. As Reyes lifted his weapon, Miguel twisted, slicing through the ropes with desperate speed. In a blur, he lunged, knocking the gun aside. A shot rang out, wild and off course. Chaos erupted. Miguel ran. Bullets tore through the night, kicking up dust at his heels. The desert became a maze of shadows and fear. He stumbled, fell, rose again, his lungs burning, his vision blurring. Behind him, Reyes shouted orders, his voice furious, his control slipping. Somehow, Miguel escaped into the darkness, the gunfire fading behind him. By dawn, he was miles away, his body broken, his spirit fractured, but alive. For weeks, Miguel hid, moving from town to town, sleeping in abandoned buildings, always watching his back. He knew La Fuerza would never stop hunting him. He knew Reyes would never forgive him. But as he stared into the cracked mirror of a gas station bathroom, his reflection bruised and bloodied, he understood something. He was no longer soldado. He was no longer bound by the oath. He was free, not safe, not absolved, but free. And yet, freedom came with its own curse. Miguel carried ghosts wherever he went. The boy under the streetlight, Flaco in the warehouse, his mother's unspoken sorrow. He would never outrun them. The story of Miguel Alvarez is not unique. Across America, thousands of young men and women walk the same path, drawn into gangs by promises of family, trapped by blood oaths, destroyed by betrayal. Some die young, some rot in prison, and a rare few escape with scars that never fade. The truth is simple and devastating. In the world of gangs, there are no happy endings, only blood, betrayal, and the echo of choices that can never be undone. And for those who dare to join, the cost is always the same. Everything. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends so they can enjoy it too.